Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. It's hard to remember a time when Britain wasn't consumed by Brexit agony. And still, it's impossible to say how and when the pain will stop. MPs are currently trying to find a Brexit consensus in defiance of the wishes of Prime Minister May. Her own deal remains short of a parliamentary majority, though she clings to the hope it will eventually prevail before time runs out. My guest is former Conservative Minister and longest-serving MP, Ken Clarke. How close to breaking point is Britain's political system? Ken Clarke, welcome to Hard Talk.
Glad to be here.
You have the rather wonderful title of Father of the House because you're the longest serving MP. You've seen a lot in your time, but have you ever seen Westminster as febrile, as hysterical and as utterly unproductive as it is today?
No. I'll give you my shortest answer of the programme. I get asked that all the time. No, Maastricht was a tea party compared with this. The Callaghan minority government was more straightforward. This is a shambles. It is a complete shambles, and the House has gone mad. We're beginning to make, I think, the last few days have seen progress back towards grown-up, sensible politics, I think. But it would be very entertaining if it wasn't also serious. At the moment, it is just a completely shambolic crisis.
You use the word shambles, and of course, I think people watching from the outside are utterly confused about precisely what is going on right now. But you just put your name to an effort by MPs to, quote unquote, take control away from the government and organise a Brexit strategy for themselves outside of government. Doesn't that simply add to the sense of shambles?
No, it's you're giving a particular description of it, actually. What I put my name to, what I voted for, and I've been pressing for a long time, was a day, putting on the agenda for a day, what are called indicative votes, an opportunity for the House of Commons to debate properly and express a preference for a way forward towards what really matters, which is the ultimate destination. What are we actually aiming to see as our long-term arrangement with the rest of Europe? And that we finally managed to get a day where we can see where a consensus lies, where a consensus might emerge, where a majority is available. Once we've got that...
But let me stop you right there. It's like a Rubik's Cube. There are so many different options involving possibly a customs union, possibly a Norway-style model, possibly a revocation of Article 50 and a cancelling of Brexit altogether. So many different options that you suggest to me it can all be sorted by MPs in one day, that they can find
one or two
common
days.
ground in one day.
Well, that's what the aim is, to actually try to put in a process of solving the Rubik's Cube, of actually producing, eventually, identifying the one, perhaps two, possible approaches where a British government could negotiate with a serious chance of getting parliamentary approval. Should have been 2 years ago. If we'd done this 2 years ago, and it had been obvious what the government had authority to negotiate, what it didn't have authority to negotiate, the whole process would have proceeded on an altogether different basis, and we wouldn't have done so much damage to the reputation of our politics and our parliamentary system as we have.
But after 2 years of frankly, of fantasy politics with people wishing for things they simply can't have, isn't this going to see MPs, again, just wishing for things they can't have? Because it's almost certain, is it not, that whatever you choose to coalesce around, Mrs May will not accept.
Well, she can't do that. And she hasn't actually said that in quite the terms that's been reported either. She's reserved the right to reject what's undeliverable and all that kind of thing.
Yes, well, the quote I've got is, I cannot, and this is Mrs May, I cannot commit the government to delivering the outcome of any votes held by this House.
And the words that are left out are her explanation of that, that, of course, if the House were resolved for something undeliverable, she couldn't deliver it. That's been repeated by some of her colleagues with wild excitement surrounding it. The rule in Britain, you'll be relieved to know, is that governments can only pursue policies if they have the approval of Parliament for those policies. Now, it's quite right, if Parliament votes for something silly, then there's nothing she can do. Parliament, I think, will vote for something more attractive to our European Union partners. I think if we vote for, no doubt you're going to go into it, broadly a soft Brexit, then the EU leaders will quite easily agree to a long extension of Article 50 in order to negotiate that conclusion, with the withdrawal agreement being left on the table for the time being until it's needed later on to conclude the whole thing.
But you are a Democrat, and you know that, by 52% to 48, people voted to leave the European Union, and you also know that the two main parties in the last election ran on manifestos which guaranteed to deliver a Brexit. And you, according to all of those who support the notion of a harder Brexit, are simply trying to undermine any meaningful departure from the European Union.
I hope I don't all say that, because that's nonsense. I have compromised more than most people have. It was 52-48, the result. The trouble with the vote to leave was it didn't address any of the questions now before Parliament. Nobody expected leave to win. Nobody explained what leave meant. Most of the people who voted leave, like quite a lot of the campaigners, had quite different ideas of what it meant.
But that's why I advisedly then mentioned the election, which we've had since then. And Theresa May made it quite plain that her red lines included no membership of the customs union, no membership of the single market, an end to freedom of movement, all of these things which you, with your soft Brexit, would like to see.
Well, they come out of the red lines, which were a mistake put in the Lancaster House speech. They didn't feature much in the election. You repeat what is currently the mantra about the manifesto, which is daft. Neither party...
You don't believe in the importance of manifestos? That sort of commitment to the people?
Remotely.
This is what you'll get if you vote for me?
The people never see the manifesto. It's a press release put out late in the campaign. I've never seen the manifesto. It was a document which emerged when we were halfway through the campaign. It had never been discussed in Cabinet. No one sent me a copy. There was a very good policy in it about social care, which was disowned 48 hours later. That was the only feature of the manifesto. The Labour manifesto came out right towards the end, when all the candidates had been adopted and we were already campaigning. So citing the manifesto is just nonsense.
It's interesting to hear your view on how democracy works. So let's just play this through.
It works on the members of Parliament exercising explaining their principles, explaining the policies, giving their judgment to the national interest, and then, quite rightly, they're judged by their constituents on what they deliver.
So
that's how parliamentary democracy works.
So let us just war game this and walk through how you think it might work. So here you sit, you MPs, over the next 24 hours, you are hoping to coalesce around something which can command a clear majority in the House of Commons. You think it will be something like, some call it Common Market 2.0. It'll involve membership of the customs union. Or the Norway option. Yeah,
I personally, my own first preference would be, which is a big compromise for me. I am accepting the verdict of the electorate. I've never previously in my life never thought I'd vote for withdrawal. I'm saying, yes, we are leaving the EU, and I wish us to stay in the single market and the customs union.
Okay, so
something like that, I think, will emerge.
All right, so let's park that and assume that over the next 24 hours, something like that might emerge from the various deliberations and votes of members of the House of Commons.
That's not settled. That's therefore the basis on which the British are then going to try to negotiate that conclusion with the European Union.
Well, only
I think they'll be very receptive.
Only, though, if the executive arm of government, that is the government led by Theresa May, agrees to take that forward as policy. Now, Theresa May clearly will not do that.
I agree with your first premise, that the executive's got to agree to carry it forward, and they're not in a position to refuse. They can't. They must just step down if they're not prepared to proceed with the approval of Parliament.
To quote the Solicitor General the other day, he said, "We are now facing a major constitutional crisis, and this is the nub of the constitutional crisis, because you and your supporters in the House..." But he was talking
about this marvellous argument they had that it was quite wrong for the House of Commons to take control of its own timetable. I know Robert Buckland. He gave it very convincingly, very well. Strictly speaking, legally is right. Don't let me be rude about the Solicitor General, but that was a good try on.
What we haven't talked about, because we've talked about outcomes, what we haven't talked about is one key change that might come to the process, and that is, if in this effort to coalesce around a common objective, MPs decide that actually the best thing to do is to put this back to the people and have a second referendum. There are a lot of people in the House of Commons who think that is the inevitable outcome because of the mess we are in. Are you one of them?
No, but that's one of the things that may emerge. I mean, I'm giving you my best bet. It is coloured by the fact that my personal hope is we go for the soft Brexit. That will begin to reconcile the 52% with the 48%, begin to get the political system back to normal. But there will be people hoping over the next 2 or 3 days to get the second referendum. And I personally don't see what the second referendum would solve. I made it quite clear I was not going to be bound by the first referendum, these broad brush opinion polls on hugely complex subjects with a 52-48% result. I mean, I don't change my lifelong opinions on that basis, and I won't be bound by the second referendum, but I may find myself in the minority. I'm in the minority on my opinion of the first referendum. It's possible you may get a second referendum.
Just to follow this through, we don't know what MPs are going to decide. We then don't know how the government is going to respond to it. It seems to me your word at the beginning, shambles, may well continue for many more days of complete uncertainty. And yet there is one thing that is quite certain. The European Union won't negotiate anymore. They say the deal is on the table, take it or leave it. And they say if you don't come up with an approval of Theresa May's deal, then on April 12th, you will leave the European Union unless you give us a very good reason why you shouldn't. And I'm beginning to think that...
No, let's get things clear. That the EU are waiting to negotiate with us. They're hoping to negotiate with us. They quite rightly won't renegotiate the terms of withdrawal deal, which is this little preparatory agreement on citizens' rights, the money and Ireland, which I support. I vote for it. Quite harmless. The right wing of my party invented all these crank theories that it was a wicked continental plot to trap us in their fiendish ways, which is a lot of nonsense. The Irish backstop's a temporary thing which will probably never be brought in, and is obviously temporary if it is, and there's nothing wrong with the Irish backstop anyway. So what they want us to do is move to the serious negotiations on the long-term arrangements, and I think the House of Commons may well do that. And then we've got another couple of years at least of negotiations.
I just wonder whether you're reading Europe the right way. Let me quote to you Emmanuel Macron. He said in the wake of the last summit, he said this: in the case of a negative vote, and he meant a new negative vote on Theresa May's deal, we will be going to no deal, he said. We all know that. It is absolutely essential to be clear, because it is a matter of the good functioning of the EU. We cannot have what I would call an excessive new extension.
Perfectly reasonable position for him to take up before one of the councils. What the last council agreed was, if Theresa's deal is rejected again, I don't think Theresa's deal is likely to be brought back before the House of Commons, but if it's rejected again, then we go back before May with an arrangement which we suggest what we then do. She can go back and seek an extension and say, let us start on the outline of where we're going, and of course eventually you'll have to expect the withdrawal agreement, but when you see where you're going, I can't see how anybody maintains the slightest objection to the withdrawal agreement, which is quite harmless.
You say you, as a Conservative MP, do not think that Theresa May will bring her deal back to be voted on for a third time because you think she can't get the votes.
Unfortunately, she loses. I personally would vote for it. It's quite harmless.
You think she should resign, I suppose, is the real question.
No, I don't think she should resign. Not because she's actually handling things magnificently, and she is at the moment under a very great deal of pressure, and people are very critical of her on all sides. But you don't resolve chaos by adding to the chaos. If she resigns at this stage, if she resigns at this stage and causes a Tory leadership election, you'll have at least 6 weeks of bloodletting in the Conservative Party. And suddenly everybody's distracted whilst we fight this out. Presumably the Europeans are waiting, meanwhile, for us to get this particular latest fit over.
No, but what if
she
resigns?
No one can see a winner emerging, likely to reunite the party or be able to tackle the problems any more than she can.
There's no time for bloodletting right now, but what if she says, I'll leave, for example, on June 30th, once this deal, my deal, has been voted through, as a means to get the votes to just get the deal over the line?
Well, that could happen. seems to be the daftest possible reason for all these people who previously were standing on the highest possible principles and the constitutional integrity of the United Kingdom and beating off wicked continental threats. But apparently they'll accept all that if so long as they've got rid of Theresa as Prime Minister, which they tried in a coup about 3 months ago and couldn't get enough votes to achieve. Anyway, if they want to behave like that, at least it'll get us through without a no-deal exit. And it'll get us through eventually to negotiations starting. Then the Conservative Party has got to find somebody capable of keeping the party together and negotiating a deal which can carry a majority in Parliament. At least when we have the leadership election, the House of Commons might now, in the next few days, make it clear to that future leader what the parameters of that negotiation have got to be.
Given the complete fragmentation and division inside the Tory party today, who is that person who could unite it, just keep it together even?
I haven't the first idea, which is why Theresa May should not make this foolish offer to get her deal through. I think much she might want to give it up, I feel very sorry for Theresa, who wasn't the cause of any of this in the first instance. She's not always handled it well. I think she is doomed to continue to be our leader, and I think the Conservative Party is doomed to accept that she should continue to lead.
Let me put the question...
I think I won't join in if you start naming people and getting me to comment on individuals. That always causes a sensation.
No, I'm not asking you...
But my answer to your question is I can't think of a solitary one of them who would be... I'm not sure any of them would hold the party together at all, particularly after a leadership election, and I can't see one who'd be better placed than Theresa to deliver the negotiations that follow.
While you don't seem prepared to indulge in names, can you think of some possible leaders, certainly people who would like to be leaders of your party, who, if they became leaders post-Theresa May, you would no longer be able to be a member of that party?
Yes, of course I can. I doubt.
Boris Johnson?
You're trying to put names to me, and I told you I wouldn't. No, I probably wouldn't leave the party because I'm a mainstream Conservative. I mean, in my entire political adult lifetime, I've been in the party, but I'm a mainstream Conservative, and some of these people are not. And but I'd probably stay nominally sitting on the benches. They could send me the whip if they want to let me know what's coming on and ask me to support them. But I think some of the would-be leadership candidates would not, in any practical terms, be leading me. Thank you very much.
Are you ashamed of your party and the way it's behaved in recent times?
No, not ashamed. I'm baffled. I mean, it is. Both parties are in a similar mess.
Don't worry. We talked to Labour Party senior figures.
Both parties are in danger of going extinct if they mishandle this. I mean, the older parties have died off in France and plenty of other Western democracies where they have similar problems.
You think the Conservative Party faces the threat of extinction today?
Well, not surviving in its present form. The threat of a permanent split is obviously quite clear. I think the Conservative Party will go through it. If you don't mention the word Europe, then the Conservative Party is reasonably cohesive on everything else as a centre-right party. But you were getting me a moment ago into this leadership election. These are dangerous months to come. And under the wrong leader, because some fanatic faction or others managed to get one of their candidates to take over, then the risk of it breaking up gets even worse. You asked me the question, what would happen if some person who I regarded as not really my kind of Conservative took over? Well, personally, I'd park myself in the party unless, of course, they turned around and purged it and got rid of me anyway, which would simplify things. But I would not regard myself as bound by the whip and being led by some of the people who think they're going to come leader if they can succeed and get rid of it. Now, that's why I don't think they will. Don't forget, the first thing the ERG did was try a coup against her. They ran it rather incompetently, and they failed. And the rules mean they can't try again for 12 months.
Indeed. Fascinating, your view of what's happening inside the Tory party. There's perhaps a bigger picture which is even more important. That is, what is happening to our political culture generally? Is there a disconnect wider, more dangerous than you've ever seen before between the political class, if I can put it that way, and the public, the voters, the people who elect these people but feel at the moment so utterly let down by them?
Yes. And also, I'd widen it even further, it's happening in every Western democracy. Something fundamentally very dangerous is happening. Trump, Brexit, Yellow Jackets, a kind of anarchist government in Italy, I could go on. They're all the same thing. There's a disconnect between what was a fairly settled political order, our traditional post-war democratic liberal constitutions, and sections of the general public. I think it's the pace of change. It's the fact that the modern economy benefits the young, the well-educated, the enterprising, the forceful, who happen to live in the right cities. There's a great bulk of the population who feel left behind. A lot of these things, from Trump to the five-star movement to Brexit, that section of the population who've disliked the elite, feel left behind. Their living standards are stagnant. The old blue-collar jobs have gone. Or if they're in the Shah Tories, the world's changing too quickly. People talk foreign languages on the bus. And my generation of politicians, I'm a veteran survivor of the political establishment, we never found a way of tackling that.
No,
they're angry and enraged now.
It's so interesting what you say, because I can't think of a more consummate insider than Ken Clarke, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, served 4 different Tory Prime Ministers, wanted to be leader of your party for so very long. You've been in Parliament for decades and decades. Be brutal about it. You are part of the problem. You have to take your share of the blame.
Well, I of course will try to take credit as well. Yeah, but it is mea culpa. I think I was blind to the danger growing, as I think were most of my contemporaries. I assumed that 1990s, the great normality, the emerging economies were entering the system. We had a rules-based global order. In Britain, we had growth with low inflation. The economy was marching on.
You thought capitalism worked for everybody, and it's not true.
We'd finally got free markets for the social conscience to work.
Well, you thought so, but clearly not.
We neglected, we failed, and nobody knows how to do it now. How to include those people who are not going to be able to take leading roles, whose living standards have stagnated or sometimes fallen subsequent time, those towns, those communities, those regions, which old industrial areas which have been left behind. And that's where the protest is coming from. The Trump vote is very similar to the protest votes we get here.
Well, let's end then by bringing it back to Brexit. George Freeman, another Tory colleague of yours, said this recently. He said, "I've never known this country so divided, so angry, in such a dangerous state. I think we are close to civil unrest." And we have had death threats to MPs, death threats to people who run petitions trying to get revocation of Article 50. There is a toxic atmosphere in this country. How worried, how dangerous do you feel this country?
Well, I agree. There is a toxic atmosphere of anger, and the political system's getting itself held in contempt. I don't think you should over-dramatise it. I don't think violence is imminent, but the Yellow Jackets took me by surprise in France. Let's stop getting too excited and go back to a reassuring note, because I think we've made progress. That's why we need to get people to coalesce around a soft Brexit. All right, we're leaving the political union, great pity, weaken us of political power. We're staying in the common market. We're not breaking our trading laws. Start bringing the 52% back together with the 48%. Allow the parties to sort of shuffle back rather guiltily to being parties. Reassure the public that we are grown-up people who will govern in the best interest and reach compromise. Stop polarising and moving to extremes as we've been doing. That will satisfy the things which George Freeman, I quite agree with him, is quite rightly worried about. This is a nasty political atmosphere at the moment.
Ken Clarke will get you back to reflect on whether your hopes were fulfilled, but for now, thanks for being on Hard Talk.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.